as we see, room regular and the hijack here checks. Um, a lot of these guys are like the one and done type players. Like if they'll throw out the continuation bet, and then after that they kind of just give up. Would you agree with that, Hunter?
Yeah, for sure. And so I mean, you definitely see a lot of like floating opportunities.
Right.
Especially like in the mid-stakes live games, you just don't see a lot of, you know, barreling with air or anything like that. People just assume, oh, this guy called, oh, he must have a piece of this, and
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
Right. So I mean that's definitely a leak on.
But the other interpretation would be, oh, this guy called in the 7 hit, he must have 5-6.
That would. Yeah, I guess that's how they think, which would be
I mean,
terrible.
I've seen a lot worse than that.
I know. Um, but so Joe Average here, we see he checks when it gets checked to him, and he has to be betting here. He has 10 high. He has a flush draw and a gut shot, and he has no showdown. He has no showdown value at all. So I mean, this is just a mandatory bet right here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he has like bottom pair with his flush draw and he's got like some showdown value. I mean, he's got no showdown value at all.
No.
So a standard like line, at least online, would be something like, bet 2/3 here and half pot the river if you miss or something. Just bet something to try to get this guy off of ace high or
Right.
pocket eights or whatever.
Exactly. So I mean, this is just technically, I think this is pretty terrible against for an average poker players that's who we're talking about here. Um, if this was like super high stakes online or something, then maybe check might be good for some reason. But for all intents and purposes, for average players, this has to be a bet here, like 100% of the time.
I would agree.
And we get a blank on the river, changes nothing. Room regular just checks again, just furthering the point that he just doesn't have anything in this pot. Joe Average has to be betting here to take this pot away.
Yeah, I mean, if the turn was a mandatory bet, like 100% of the time, this is like you have to bet this 200% of the time.
Right.
I mean, he has no chance of winning without a bet. So throw, $80 out there and hope for the best at this point. I mean,
yeah. And just too often I've seen people check here, and it really caught me off guard the first couple times I saw it. I was shocked when people tabled their hands, and I would see ace high win here, and the guy has 10-9, and Joe Average has 10-9, and I couldn't believe it. So if I was in a pot like this, I would have had Joe Average's range here completely backwards. And as we see, Ace King takes it down, which it really shouldn't ever happen like that.
So when if you're in the next hand with Joe Average after seeing this, I mean, first thing I would be looking to do, I wouldn't bet the turn against him because you're going to get a free card if the board's drawy. I mean, he's probably checking. Like, what does he even bet here? I mean, does he bet Queen Jack?
I would assume his hand range would be all made hands, pretty much, is the adjustment we would have to make.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely made hands, but I also wonder like how thin he even value bets. Probably not very. I mean, he probably value bets a straight, a set, and like ace jack on that turn. And everything else, I mean, I feel like he's checking back a lot.
Yeah, it's quite possible he doesn't bet Queen Jack here for value for whatever reason.
So it actually becomes an interesting question. Do you barrel this river? If you're the room regular with ace king here, is it correct to bet the river? How many draw combos does he have versus made hands he check back?
Well, I think he's more likely to probably call the river than he is to bet it himself. I would assume if he has like a Queen Jack.
I 100% agree there.
Like, how many times are we folding out pocket eights if we bet here with ace king?
Like never.
Yeah, probably never. So, I mean, I guess that's the answer.
Yeah. Do you just to expand on that a little bit? Do you think that people with like pocket eights here, I mean, they probably I would assume that like Joe Average would fold the turn with pocket eights if he called the flop, but if the turn goes check check, is he calling the river with them just because it's one more bet to show the hand down?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think so. If the turn goes check check, then I have to assume he's calling the river with pocket eights just because like he has to be at least he's just kind of suspicious the guy didn't just bet the turn again. If he had a jack, he'd probably bet the turn again type deal.
Yeah, that was
And
kind of thinking.
when these guys get a chance to show down a made hand for a halfway cheap bet, I think they take it.
Got ya.
I
Got ya.
mean that's my inclination anyway.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there.
I mean they love getting the showdown. It seems
Oh,
like
it's all about the showdown
yeah. I mean,
and seeing the flop.
right, definitely seeing the flop. Seeing the flop is number one. That's
Yes,
very
oh
very
yes, no
important.
question about that.
Yeah. All right, so that's hand one. I think that illustrates the point pretty well. And just be aware that in a live setting you'll see stuff like this, and first couple times caught me off guard. I'm sure it would catch everybody off guard, but that's just small adjustment we have to make. Okay, so our second concept here, implied odds hands go way up in value. Something like a suited king can turn into an implied odds hand because of the many multi-way pots. Also, middling suited cards actually go down in value in multi-way limp pots because having a second best flush is much more common. I mean, this is not something you really ever encounter in online, so kind of caught me off guard. Multi-way pots in general are just much more common in a live poker setting. Wouldn't you say, Hunter?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I would actually say they're a lot more common, and the second point is super valuable too because not only are like flush over flush examples really a lot more common live, but the stacks are also usually a lot deeper. So not only is it more common that your 8 high flush is not good, but you stand to lose a lot more than 100 big blinds with it also.
Right. That is a good point. you know, I said something like a suited king can turn into applied odds hands. Obviously, reverse implied odds still do exist if someone has the ace high flush, but I think we're nitpicking at that point.
Yeah, but I mean, a hand like king 5 suited becomes a lot more playable than like an 8-7 suited, even, or an 8-6 suited, or something like that.
Right. I agree. If the pot's like 4-way and you're in the cutoff or whatever, and it's already 4-way and it's limp to you, then we need to be limping with like the king 5 suited. And there's
Oh yeah, absolutely.
it might be debatable if there's more value in just raising there as a bluff, but which I could see, depending on 100 other factors, you could probably go one way or the other with that, but just limping along is totally acceptable, and it's not something you would ever do online, but live, it's a play it's a play that's okay.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where your risk reward with it is just so good. And I mean, I know I've made live videos. I think I made a video on Merge a few months ago where the table was really loose and everyone was limping, and I was limping the button with like, I don't know, some speculative suited hand simply because the risk reward is so good. Whereas if I'd raised, everyone was going to call, and it's going to be very difficult to win the pot post flop without making a hand, and that just wasn't going to happen very often. And I think it's the same kind of thing here. And the other thing is, like, when the pot's real small, like a limp pot, people get very disinterested in it, and no one ever wants to fight for it. So it can be easier. It can be easier to pick up, like, a little $25 pot here and there because no one else cares, and they just want to get to the next hand because this pot means nothing. So
Uh, and let me also say, like, implied odds hands go way up in value. Also just because people are in general just get very attached to their second best hands in live poker, and their hand reading isn't as good, and they kind of go off at maybe absolute strength a little bit. So say something like maybe they have like a two pair type hand, and it's just very obvious spot where they can really only beat a bluff, and it's like a four straight is out there.
They have like 8-7 on like 8-7 Jack 10 Queen.
Right, yeah, something like that. They can only beat a
Yeah.
bluff, and it's a spot where no one's ever bluffing in a spot like that.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll still get paid off. So that's another reason why, like, implied odds are much larger in live poker.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Okay, so let's check out the hand history that we have to go along with the slide. Okay, so here's our hand history about the implied odds. Hands go up in value. Um, Back same table as before. All the favorite cast of characters are here. Um, Limp from the live grinder, limp from the wannabe, limp from room regular. Gets to the hero, which is Joe Average. He limps long with 7-6 suited, as expected, totally standard. Big blind checks. And we flop a flush draw here. Our boy Joe Average flops a flush draw. Um, and we get a lead out here by wannabe for close to pot. I really wouldn't read too much into the bet sizing at all. It is close to pot, but that's just, I don't know. It's just kind of what they do.
Yeah, I mean, what's he gonna do? Bet like 15, a half pot and a tiny limp pot,
Yeah.
Plus, he's a wannabe. He's gonna come out strong. I mean,
Right. Room regular makes the call for 25, and our boy makes the call again. Raise isn't really an option for him. This is just how he would play the hand.
yeah, he's trying to hit his flush.
Definitely. We get a fold from big blind and under the gun live +2 live grinder folds. Again, we have that dumb error here where it says check, 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 which obviously we can disregard.
Yep, please ignore that.
Yep. Okay. So we make our flush here on the turn, or Joe Average makes his flush. Check from the wannabe. Room regular bets 75. Does room regular? He could be betting here with a flush. He could be betting here with two pair or a set. Past that, I don't know what else would even be in his range.
Well, he probably would have raised the flop with a set, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So he could definitely have two pair, though, if he like turned like ace-8 or something.
Yeah, ace-8 or ace-2. Ace-queen, he would probably raise pre-flop, but maybe not. Who knows?
Yeah.
But so either has the flush or two pair would be most likely.
Yep.
Past that, I don't see him like semi-bluffing with like the king. The king of diamonds. I doubt he would just semi-bluff the king of diamonds, like the dry king of diamonds.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Our boy makes a call here, and wannabe folds. Again, we have the stupid error here with the replay where it says check, check. Ignore that. Brick on the river changes nothing, and really, and we have a bet of 200 here by room regular. Does a guy like this ever bet the river here with two pair?
I mean, I wouldn't think so.
I don't see it too often either. I think his range is nuts or air, and he, as we said before, we really don't think he has any air in his range.
It wouldn't be a particularly great bluffing spot for air anyway.
No.
And if he's the regular, I gotta think he's competent with some big leaks, but I don't think he has any air.
That's a good way to put these guys. That's competent with a lot of big leaks. That's exactly what he is. So
Cool.
He's not a complete fish or anything, and he's probably good enough to make money in these games.
Yeah, and if he's spending all his time, he's probably winning something.
Right. And and it's a pretty healthy bet here of 200. So
Yeah, and I think that's actually a great point. I mean, a bet like that. I think if he had something less, he'd be betting less. It's a big, strong bet size, and I think that's a important piece of information.
Right. It's not like maybe if he had like ace-8 or ace-2, two pair type hand, maybe he would make like a blocking type bet, like an I want to get the showdown type bet. But this 200 bet is not a bet he would make with ace-8 or ace-2.
For sure.
But we don't expect Joe Average to like hand raid like amazingly or anything. So,
Yeah, I mean, Joey Average is calling 100% of the time
right,
here.
he's always calling here because he has a flush, and you know when the room regular turns over as the king nine of diamonds, then Joe Average is gonna complain and whine to the rest of the table. But,
It's just that's just his bad luck.
right about
When in reality, this was
yeah,
probably avoidable.
yeah, he could probably fold the river, but he's gonna tell everyone how terrible he runs. But
Right, of course.
um, doing a little hand reading, I think it's probably a pretty easy fold on the river.
Yeah, and that's another obviously great example of just how different it is from online. I mean, that's not a standard fold by any stretch of the imagination online.
Well, oh, absolutely.
I mean,
you can't ever fold
if ever.
there.
I mean,
No.
It would take an extraordinary set of circumstances to even consider folding a flush online.
Yeah, I agree. No, it's a super standard. I didn't even think of that. That's a super standard call online. But here, I think the hand ranges are so heavy towards the nuts, and like
Mm-hmm.
and when room regular bets the turn, like we said, he doesn't ever bet here just with the dry king of diamonds, which is absolutely would be something that like a normal online player would do.
Yep.
And it's just the ranges in these games is a lot different, and it really caught me off guard at first, and that's going to be a lot of the range adjustments are going to be these first couple slides, and something like this when I would see a hand like this go down, I'd be surprised about room regulars betting range, and I would also just be disappointed in Joe Average for not being if he's here all the time, like Joe Average guy, not all the time, but he plays 3 times a week type guy. If and he's a lot more used to these ranges than I am, and he should be able to find a fold here. But that's kind of the point. So I think that'll wrap up our first episode here. Is there anything you wanted to add, Hunter?
No, I think that's good. I think it's a real good start to the series.
Okay, I mean we have a long way to go in the series, so
For sure.
Um, thanks for checking out the series. There's a ton of stuff still to go. Obviously, didn't get through as many slides as I'd hope, but that's fine.
Guys, just hit us with any comments or questions, and we'll make sure we get to them in the forum.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, guys. This has been Stosh and Hunter for DragtheBar.com.